is our executive director of the Arizona Parent Family Coalition. She forgot to mention that. My name is Kathy Basher, and I am the president of NAMI Yavapai, and Lori Badir is the chair of the Northern Arizona Parent Family Coalition. So we would like to welcome everyone to this very exciting panel today.
Thank you, Kathy. And I want to thank everyone who has shown up, especially our panel members. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel members before we get started with the questions and discussion. We have Damian Browning with the great headphone set on today. Damian co-founded Steps to Recovery Homes in 2013. He currently holds the position of CEO for the 501c3 organization. He's built a nonprofit from the ground up. 9 years later, the organization now has their own building, a men's facility, a women's facility, a transitional house, job development program, a huge resale store, and an outpatient treatment center. And I read in the newspaper that they recently got I think, $400,000 grant for housing. Is that right, Damian?
Yes, that's correct. In Sedona for transitional housing, workforce and recovery transitional housing.
So congratulations on that. And now we have also with us today, Samantha Garcia Pinal, manager and mentor and volunteer services for Our White Foundation. Samantha is focused on leveraging her journey to educate and motivate others to embrace their unique abilities and celebrate being exactly who they are. Samantha uses her years of experience in marketing and training to help participants rebrand themselves. Her passion lies in nonprofit to bring services to women who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, to help open doors, to support and connect the community to these special people. Thank you, Samantha, for being here with us. We also have Dan Haley. Dan has served as CEO for Hope Incorporated since 2010. He's worked in the behavioral health criminal justice systems in Southern Arizona his entire career, striving to bridge the two systems through his work at Hope, but previously with the Regional Behavioral Health Authority, REBA, as a criminal justice specialist. Hope provides peer support services in 8 counties throughout Southern and Northern Arizona. As a peer living with mental illness and substance use disorder, Dan knows firsthand the power of peer and family involvement. Thank you, Dan, for being here. Now we have also Troy. Troy Grover has been with Hope Lives for 4 years and has been the forensic program manager at the Flagstaff office for 3 years. He served 5 years in prison for 7 felonies and has been in recovery for over 4.5 years from drugs and alcohol. At Hope Lives, he has served as mental health courts, served in mental health courts in 2 superior courts and 4 municipal courts. Troy is currently moving to Mojave County to open Hope Lives offices in Kingman, Bullhead City, and Lake Havasu, where he will be working in 9 treatment courts. He will also be starting a pre-education diversion program in Mojave County. And Mojave County is just absolutely starved for this. It's really exciting to see that happen. So if I left anything out, I apologize. And again, thank you all for being here. And with that said, we can go ahead and start with the questions. Right, Christina?
All right. Yes. Thank you, Lori. And thank you to our panel members for being here today. Very impressive bios. So if we want to start with what we wanted to do is start and have each panel member sort of just share what's heavier on their heart, tip of their tongue around the importance of mental health and criminal justice, that intersection, and what they feel is most important for us to hear. So we will start out with Troy.
Thank you, Christina. So I, like Lori said, I've served 5 years in prison and about a year in county over the course of my using career. And just to be clear, I have 7 felonies and I was not framed. One of the things that I think that is most important to understand about the intersection between mental health and the justice system is that it's a civil rights issue. And the reason that it's a civil rights issue, like in America, unfortunately, and I love my country, don't get me wrong, I love my country. We are the best country in the world for sure. We also have a tendency to categorize people hierarchically. We tend to view people and place them in categories, and people that we don't like, we tend to discriminate against. And the way that we justify discriminating against them is we dehumanize them. One of the ways that we dehumanize them is we take away their rights. We take away their voice. And I've been off of probation for 2 years and a little bit. And I don't have the right to vote. I know somebody on this call is going to say, well, Troy, you can apply to get your rights restored. And my response to that is I shouldn't have to. It's time that we stop discriminating against people because of a substance use disorder, because of a mental illness. And that's what I see as the main issue today is that, discrimination is only important if you're the person that's being discriminated against. It's only a civil rights issue if it's your rights that are being cast aside. And that's what we're doing to our justice-involved people. We used to do that to women. We've done that to people of color. And most recently, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus and like judge communities. When I say communities, I mean local governments, for their policies. But some of them are discriminatory. They're marginalizing populations based on a mental health illness and justice system involvement. And that's what I see as the biggest issue in mental health today is that, justice system is the new, justice system involvement, mental illness is the new skin color, it's the new sex. I mean, we used to discriminate against women. Women still do not have equal pay. Women still do not enjoy, equal rights with, you would think that so typically you don't expect this to come from me. I am a straight white man. I'm not the person that you expect to hear anything about civil rights. But my lived experience is what brings this up. Recently, in meeting new community partners in a new county, and so we have good relationships with the courts that we've already working in Maricopa County and in Coconino County, where we are a valued partner in the court, in the treatment court team. And moving into a new county, there's different policies that are in place. And, there are 9 treatment courts. We may or may not be participating in them. I just discovered last week because of our justice system involvement. In other words, they're happy to come have us serve their members. They're happy to have us come serve in their community, just not equal with them, just not on the team. And that's discrimination. Call it what you want. And that's where I'm at this morning. Thanks, guys.
Oh, Troy, I'm so glad I started with you because your energy just empowered us all. So thank you for that. It's our lived experience and our passion that just brings so much realness to these conversations. So thank you, Troy. All right, who would like to go next? Samantha,
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that, but
right?
I, along with Troy, has also been impacted by the criminal justice system. My involvement goes back to my childhood. I started my life in the criminal justice system as a symptom of a deeper seated issue, which is my mental health. So as a result of trauma, leading into my chemical imbalance as I changed into, as I grew into a young adult, my symptom and the way that I acted out was by using substances as my own treatment, because my family unit did not know how to manage mental health and any kind of chemical imbalances and all of those things. So I was not the perfect kid, which led into me not being the perfect adult. And I spent years, I am 50, coming up on 51, in the criminal justice system, in and out of prison 4 times, a collective time of about 16 years in prison, and God only knows how many times in jail. But as a society, we tend to, and it's like groups like these and groups who are motivated to create change. I may not think this way, but we become an other class. We become a class of others. And to your point, Troy, of that discrimination comes involved, right? Because they don't know us, because we don't have necessarily a face, because we are just the jail and prison population. We are not a face that they can identify with necessarily. So we do not have a voice. And when people hear, they're like, oh, you've been to prison? Oh, you've been to jail, right? They kind of sit back further and create this distance. But truly, my substance abuse and all of those things are a symptom of a deep-seated problem that we have in our society of not addressing mental health. And that's the whole range of mental health, whether it's from trauma specifically or substances, which tends to be another symptom again of that deeper seated issue of how you were raised, and creating new values and all of those different things. For me, I have now been out about 2.5 years. I'm finally off paper for the first time since I was 16. So I am just now learning how to be able to use my voice in society, and I wouldn't be able to do that without platforms like this and agencies that have stepped forward into the foray of helping dealing with mental health. But I still think that we are a very long way from being where we need to be, and addressing those things prior to getting on the hamster wheel of criminal and justice impacted. I think there's a huge opportunity that we can address earlier on. So that's where I'm at today. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Samantha. All right, Dan. Welcome.
I do not have a lived experience of incarceration, but I've been working in the field for over 4 years. And I think that what we have today is far greater than we had even 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, when I sit around and I look at, and I share this, and people that know me, I really believe this. We as peers, I am in recovery, clean and sober 31 years. Was first diagnosed at the age of 9 with a major depressive disorder with anxiety. I always talk about, and I've been involved with the movement for a long time, how we were, invited to the table, but we weren't allowed to speak. We were invited to the table and we could speak a little. Now we're invited to the table and they can't keep our mouths shut. And that's really the progression, I believe, that we've had in the criminal justice system. Our society has allowed the criminal justice system to become the #1 behavioral health and substance abuse treatment center across the nation. We know that they're not equipped. Their services are not adequate for some of the people that get incarcerated. But I believe that the change is possible and we're seeing change. 10 years ago, peers weren't in the courtrooms. And, 5 years ago, we weren't allowed to go back to DOC if we had a DOC arrest. So we've made progress. Voices are being heard, but it takes folks like us to remind other folks, the decision makers, on what more we need. I really believe we are the boundary spanners between behavioral health and the criminal justice system. Ideally, my vision would be somebody calls the police on somebody who's acting a little bit weird, and the police go out and they pick up the person and they go, oh my gosh, this is mental health or behavioral. We're going to get them right into treatment. We have some of that going on, but we don't have, there's still barriers. But that's why you have, for the first time, you have peer supports that are in the jail setting, meeting with folks prior to them being released and helping with the discharge planning. So I think that even though we have a long way to go, our voice is being heard. And I really believe that they've opened up a can of worms and we don't shut up because we want our voices to be heard. And so that's where I'm at today.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Welcome, Damien. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so crap, I don't know, man. Troy, I gotta say, man, you kind of set fire on the stage. I'm not really sure. There's so much to talk about. There's so many passions and that I have over the whole situation and society at large, and how addiction has manifested from so many different things. And I could go on a soapbox for that forever, but I do believe I was incarcerated for 5 years. I was in heavy addiction for 19 years. And coming out of that, I realized, some things that, most people with addiction issues, first and foremost, not all of them, but most of us are really good people. We start self-medicating at an early age for who knows what, there's different reasons. For me, it was my parents left when I was 2 years old, and I never felt good enough about myself. And so I looked for attention outside of myself and approval. I was an approval seeker for a long time because I never had any approval for myself. I didn't feel like I was lovable. I didn't feel like I was worthy. There was a lot of things going on. I had no idea. I started partying at an early age, and I didn't know I was going to be in prison. I didn't know my whole life was going to be messed up. So I see a lot of people that are in prison. I know a lot of people that are still in prison. I know a lot of people that are institutionalized. I know that there's a lot of people that are in prison, maybe not for an addiction because of the addiction, but it is for addiction. I don't think they treat enough addiction in there. I think that substance use disorders for sure, and go right along with mental health and other co-occurring disorders, that if in the prison systems there's more programming around that, or more maybe even a therapy program to get right to the trauma about why they're in there, and let's get real and honest about what's going on. Because I know for me, when I was in prison, there were some programs, there was nothing really like that. And I kind of, it's kind of like we avoid it. We kind of brush all that stuff under the rug. And then all of a sudden there's no real help with transitioning. So like coming out into the world, I think transition is one of the hardest things we do. There's no funding, you know, it's not like, I mean, I remember working in there doing masonry because I'm a mason, and I was so happy I was doing, you know, $30 an hour work. I actually worked in Winslow. I did some rock at the Winslow airport, and I was so happy just to put my hands on tools again. But I was only getting 50 cents an hour. I mean, by the time when I got out, I had nothing to get out with. My grandparents let me stay in their shed in Cornville. So thank God about that. But I mean, you know, not everybody has that opportunity, you know, so there's a lot of holes to be filled. I think that if we really, and I do think there are things changing, you know, I know that in Yavapai County, their jail, they have like a mental health pod now. I know in Coconino County, they have an Exodus program where people go in and actually, if they have substance, I don't know if they're still doing it, but if they have substance abuse, they can go into a different pod and have like meetings come in, and they could do stuff on like self-help and recovery and focus on that. And I think that's the big thing that needs to be done, instead of just putting us into incarceration and then, you know, not really working on let's getting people better. But again, DOC is it's a business. I mean, I don't know. I think they're getting more open to it, and there is some things about recidivism, and there's also, okay, like, so when people get out of jail, what are we really doing? Where are we really sending them? I mean, and then the silos and the monopolies. I mean, there's so many places that like are not working together. And I don't even know if they don't want to work together, or I don't know if it's more of everybody's just so darn busy, and we're still avoiding things, you know, we're still separating as a society instead of connecting. And I'm not really sure that's a whole bigger issue. But for me, I mean, I did get my rights back. I got out of prison. I know that there's a Yavapai reentry project, but that wasn't available for me when I got out. And I had 3 children that were in permanent guardianship, and I had no help with that. I had to be my own attorney. I had to try to get them back. They told me I'd never get my kids back. I eventually, after 3 years, got my kids back. You know, going back to school, just trying to put my life together. And I got all my rights back. So Troy, it is possible, but you know, and I also heard, you know, it took me a long time. They wouldn't give my rights to bear arms for my felonies for 10 years, but I was just at a reentry housing and job fair last Friday down in Phoenix, and I had a booth there, and I was talking to some people, and I guess they're changing to where you don't have to wait for 2 years, depending on your crime. You can actually apply to get your rights back right away. But I mean, yeah, I mean, why are they taking our rights? I mean, I think the bigger issue is not that people that are self-medicating, why are they self-medicating? Because what happens is we just get into this vicious cycle of self-destruction, and it's like we're not really bad people, but we don't know how to get out of that. So once a crisis does happen, I always say there's a lot of people, like I'm a member of MatForce, and MatForce does great things, and you know, they're about prevention. But my thing is prevention is rehabilitation, right? So like when somebody actually, what do we do with the parents? I mean, it's good telling the kids, but the kids are looking up to their parents because they're their higher power. You know, so they look and see what they learn. It's the domestication of humans. We learn from the people that are around us. So it's like, what do you do? You know, what do you do is when a parent or somebody has a crisis, there's usually something that happens where they get willing to change. Then it's like, okay, what do you do now that you have that window of opportunity that somebody wants to change? That's where we can make a difference, I believe. I mean, I think all the other stuff's important. Don't get me wrong. I think it's very important in everything we're doing, but you know, what are we really doing to provide quality care and wraparound services for somebody that's really willing to change?
Great. Thank you, Damian. An impressive group of panelists we have here today. So let me, we had a couple of questions going into this panel, and now I have like 10 more questions that I've already come up with after hearing from you all. So let me sort of just start out with what is working within our prisons? What is working?
Who you're asking?
Who'd ever like to go first? You guys can just jump in.
Is that one of the questions we had here?
Yes.
I can jump in. You know, there are some programs in prison that are working well. I think more programming is always beneficial, more support groups and interaction, more tangible life skills before being released and to get the inmate ready. I think better individual reentry plans is one thing. Everyone getting out is dealing with different circumstances. I think more collaboration with reentry programs that are vetted. and more funding to help individuals come out is something we can work on. Reclaiming the first few weeks while looking for employment. I think there's a breakdown that's not working with the CO3s. I don't think there's enough case management for people. I know for myself, it was really hard for me to get anything done and get with the CO3. And then the CO3 really was like limited on the resources they had or really didn't have. So, and I don't know how to fix that. Going through it myself, it seems like I've been, they did have programs. I went through a lot of programs, but they were kind of like, it was kind of like I was going through them to like, I had, there was Smart Recovery, but it was only a couple week program. So I think maybe longer programs or more individualized programs or more buy-in, maybe more motivational interviewing to get somebody to buy in and why they're buying in. Maybe the answer is to have certain phases in certain programming being mandatory in prison for like therapy and stuff like that during their incarceration, more resources, and I put more time with the case manager. Okay, maybe having CO3s being more productive, stronger stipulations on parole. I think when people get out on parole, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, go do whatever you want. Oh yeah, go smoke weed, or oh yeah, go, wherever you want to live. But I think it needs to be more individualized about what that certain person needs. And more client-centered care around that, not just what they think they need, but actually, have a plan. I don't think there's a lot of plans. For me, I did a recovery, reentry, what was it? I can't even remember what it says. But anyways, I did this plan and it really wasn't a big plan. It was kind of like, hey, where can we put you? So I got.
All right, great. Thanks, Damian.
I know that that some prisons have peer support programs that they've started up. And that's just amazing. Give them, people who are incarcerated are very open to suggestion in that environment. Like they're very humble and very open to trying something. And so I think that that's great. But one of the things that we've seen is, the introduction of peer support training and programs in prison. There's the TIP program. And I know that our Hope Lives office in Phoenix is involved with that. I don't have any personal experience with that, but I know that the team in Phoenix does. And, they have people coming out and starting to work in peer support. I just think that that's awesome. I've seen, to be clear, I've seen a lot of goodwill from our community partners. The perspective of the prisons has changed. It has from when I was, in prison. And that's very encouraging.
Thanks, Troy. Samantha or Dan?
Yeah, I can speak. Definitely less on the jail side, just because of, I can speak from my own personal interactions and the way that I transition through jail. On every occasion, it's number one, it's a housing for you. It's just a processing plant, right? It's just from either to get you back onto the street, back to your same lifestyles, or get you to prison so that we can house you in prison and make money off you this way. When I was in jail, it was all about getting me over medicated and under treated, if that makes sense, because it is so transitory and transient, really. You are not given a ton of support in changing direction, changing the trajectory of your life, right? I came out of county jail and into prison, maxed out on medication and completely without treatment. And so I had to get into RNA, which is where you're locked down with nothing and nowhere to process anything, addicted basically to a new form of pills, which is, like the psych medications and Visceral and everything else. So I was detoxing in RNA from stuff that they had treated with me with in county jail. So once I got into prison, there again, they they have a very small formulary where they can either just throw spaghetti at the wall. So I ended up coming out very traumatized by the mental health, trying to get my chemicals back in balance where I wasn't, because there was such a drive for me to change, right? What did work, there are, to your point of having people inside that are trained within the mental health rate, which are they're called RSSs inside, Recovery Support Specialists, which are here. They have been making a difference. I speak directly from my interactions because Arrowhead runs a 1-week program inside Perryville, where it's part of the Second Chance Center that, is created, that has DES and a bunch of different agencies that come in, CMS, a few of people, we all come together to have that exposure to the women preparing to come home. But we're literally a drip in the bucket. Like, we have no access to some of the higher class population. So they're just kind of floundering around trying to get whatever that you can out of whoever that you can. So I would say the opportunity is to spread further and deeper. Like, I'm sure it's the same way on men's unit, where again, they have a small units or small groups that really give you awareness of resources, awareness of things that can be different when you come home. Because when I had transitioned, I had none of those things in my previous incarcerations, where I didn't know there was anything different. I didn't know there was community out here that was invested in giving me a different chance, a different path, right? So if anything, we need to band together as partners in the community to create awareness and connection and to a larger population. Because any of the other times coming home, and I know, speaking from experience with the women coming home, that they're clueless, right? They don't have any idea that there's another way. So I think, like I said, I love the thing that was sent with our questions, like different recovery centers in different places. But again, as a community for trying to provide resources, I only know a drip in the bucket. So how can I perpetuate it forward and give other people more access to benefits and treatment and resources at the end of the day?
Great. Thank you, Samantha. And Dan, do you have anything to add to what is working within our jails or prisons? Dan, you're on mute.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things working well. We provide here at Hope, we have reach-in programs, both in our local Pima County Jail and then, of course, with the Department of Corrections. We hire those RSSs that get released and come back as a returning citizen. I think that, and I worked 2.5 years in the prison system as a release planner. And they, the bottom issue still is housing. Where are they going to go? How they're going to connect it, creating those natural support systems. But the department itself, both, the criminal justice system is becoming more knowledgeable and sees the benefit of peer support and family support, because you're making those connections. And we sold family support in our Pima County Jail because they were, the chief was always getting phone calls from family members about my poor little boys in custody. Well, let's utilize family support and try and work on that. So I think they're more open. I think for me, what it boils down to is resources. And when I mean that, financial resources. For folks coming out, we spend an awful lot of money in our prison systems. And I think if we really worked on a cost analysis, they know that it's a moneymaker. and let's try and get some of that money back out in the community.
Great,
Uh,
thank you, Dan. Go ahead,
Christina, can I
Troy.
add? Yeah,
Please,
so
Troy.
I heard prison and I wasn't thinking jail, but since we're talking jails, there's a lot of exciting things that are happening in the jails in Coconino and Mojave County. So Amy Bacon is the program manager in Coconino County for Pathways, and she's just killing it out there. So in Pathways in Coconino County, what Pathways is as people are released from jail, they have to go through Pathways and that connects them to resources. They have clothing, you can get a phone. That works, like they'll connect it and get you a phone and connect you to Catholic Charities, peer support, and anything else on the way out. And that's OCR, like for opiates, crisis response team. The county is doing an amazing job there. Also,
So Troy,
yeah.
just to make sure I understand, so they have to go through Pathways.
Okay, they don't have to. They don't have to receive anything, but it's right there as they're leaving.
Okay,
And they're invited to. There's
so it's
clothing.
encouraged and accessible.
Yeah, it's right there, like you walk past it.
Okay,
And so when lots of times we'll hopefully we'll be picking up people from jail and then taking them to like treatment or whatever after that, or to court, probation, pre-trial, and we'll take them in there, and it's really helpful. In addition to that, there's in Mojave County, Captain Bischoff and Tammy at the jail there are doing an amazing job. They have a reentry program. What they're doing is they're screening their clients upon like incarceration. So like once they do an intake, they're being screened, which is just amazing. And from that screening, they start sending referrals. Like we're one of the people that they refer to. They just last week, they started sending us a list of people to visit. And so after they do that screening, when people do their intake in Mojave County, then they'll send out the referrals as needed. They also have behavioral health there that they'll send referrals to that are on that reentry team. And so they're doing a lot of in-reach in the county jail in Mojave and setting up things so that when the people are released, it's a warm handoff to somebody. It's not just back into the community. And so, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening on the county level in both Mojave and Coconino County.
great. Thank you, Troy. And I see a lot of conversation and questions coming in through the chat. That's great. We'll continue to make sure we hit on our main points today and then refer to that as well. So thank you for participation in the chat there. We started talking a bit about reentry programs, so let's talk a little bit more about that. What's working within? What are some reentry programs that seem to be working that you're excited about? And what is sort of missing in some of those reentry programs that are out there?
Well, I can talk about what we do. We have a reentry program both at the prison and at the county level. At our county level, we actually I have 4 staff that are housed at the jail. Most of the staff work with folks that at initial appearance. So we get to, we help identify those folks, and then we have conversations around if they're interested in peer support or family support services once they get released. And when they get released, we follow them while they're in custody. And this has been made available, as we know, following somebody that's on Medicaid. They lose their Medicaid when they come in, but we have 2 health plans that have said, hey, we want to put staff in there to help, coordinate care with our members. So that we were able to provide that service. The other service that we're doing is we work in the Second Chance Center, where we provide 7 groups a week there. And we're not officially co-located, but it's almost pretty co-located. We're there 5 days a week. And we work with those folks that are back and their next option is going back to prison, but we're able to help engage them and make sure they get connected with a health home if they're interested in it, explain to how to be successful on parole. So we have a program that offers those type of services.
Great, thank you, Dan. Reentry. What's working, what's missing?
So I kind of alluded to it through woven into the questions, but previous questions. But Daniel, we also run as part of the Second Chance Center. We do a 1-week class, and in fact, one's starting this morning that I'm supposed to be leading. But yeah, no, but Brandy has it. But yeah, so we go in and we are running about the 1 week, and we talk about, understanding values and, rebuilding boundaries and, basically the basics. But it's a 1-week program, and it's only, like I said, a drip in the bucket. Not all people have access to it. And I think that that's where we really run into the challenge, is not being exposed to more of the population. And I mean, Arrowhead is a very small organization. We are literally at the drip in the bucket when it comes to supporting 40,000 women. We're only getting access to roughly, roughly like 30 something a month, so it's small, and it's not enough. That's what and one of the things that we've been able to realize as a piece of that, we've gone from a recidivism rate of 30-40s is where Arizona is running right now, into sub-5 with our participants, because we have such a heavy presence in life.
Hey, Samantha, your audio is cutting out a bit.
Is it?
We were
Okay.
slowly losing you. If you want to speak again, we can see.
Yeah, you come back to me and I'll switch audio.
We can hear you better now.
See if it'll stick with me. But yeah, it's like it kind of got derailed, but yeah, it's just really being able to access more people. We are starting a pilot on, but we're trying to.
All right, Samantha, I'm gonna let you
Come
switch
back.
audio. Okay, we're gonna let you switch. Let's see, Damien, reentry programs. What's working, what's still needed?
Well, I mean, I am a reentry coach for the Mount Forest Yavapai reentry project. I don't really work with too many participants, but I do see that there's a lot of success in that program. I think the mentorship program that they provide, Clarissa and the team actually work really hard at kind of doing more and more and seeing what could be done. I know that there's still a lot of things needed. Some of my thoughts are obviously funding. I mean, more funding to help. I know that there's some second chance things going on in some programs, but not it doesn't help. Like the second chance program that I know about, I've been trying to go for the grant up here to get people for like the first, 30 to 90 days to actually help with housing and programming and job development. But the second chance programs that I've seen are all down in Maricopa. So there's nothing really up here. So I know more funding for like to put people through programming for like actually to work on their behaviors and therapy and job development. Some of the main key players that help with successful reentry transition. I do believe that there should be more, there should be more mentorship, a stronger emphasis on maybe not enabling. And that's kind of I don't know, I think that's a training issue. I think there should be a little bit more training on boundaries, motivational interviewing, conflict resolution, crisis management, more resources and more knowledge available. And that might be it's kind of hard when you have volunteers. I mean, the reentry project does great and they're all volunteers. So maybe actually coming up with some funding to make those paid positions and getting more peer training and training on what it actually looks like to actually, on some of those things. And I don't know of a lot of other reentry programs. I know that the reentry project is reaching out and they're willing to, and I seen that in the chat that they're willing to train other counties. And I think they are, from what I've heard, is they're training a lot of other counties on their program. And I think something like that, instead of like recreating the wheel, I think, since it is a nonprofit, it's kind of like our nonprofit, I'm willing to start other programs if I had the funding availability. It's like, if something's working, let's grow that. That's the connection piece. Instead of like getting into the silos and separating, let's take something that's working and let's put more effort into it. And so I think funding's a big thing with all that, really.
Great, thanks, Damien. And to your point, yes, we have John and Clarissa are talking about the reentry program here in the chat, which is another reason why we wanted to have this conversation, to sort of help, give our thoughts and our opinions on what would be valuable for these reentry projects. Really excited to see that we're expanding on our reentry projects, but want to make sure that the voice of those who have been through this experience, both on the behavioral health and criminal justice side, that their voice is heard in this process.
One more thing, and it's really important. I'm sorry, I forgot. One more thing is I think that with the reentry project and with what Bat Force is doing, I think people like myself and people that have really been successful and through it as peers in that problem have really turned their life around and have gotten their rights back and been through all that. Their kids get back with family. They really need to be used a little bit more on what's working and not. I think that more advocacy and taking people in the community that have really that are advocates and really bringing them into the conversation about how to grow these programs. I don't think that happens enough.
Great, Damien. So can we expand on that a little bit more? What do we think needs to happen in order for that voice to be heard?
I think go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead, Damien.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the programs that are doing it just need to, I mean, I know they're so big. I think it's another thing with they're busy trying to make these things happen. I think the ask, I think, knowing that there is people out there, there is people that'll help. There's people that jump in, but I really want to hear what Troy had to say, or Dan, or
Yeah, so you already touched on it. Like, what's working is having those with lived experience go into the jails and do it, because here's the thing, addicts and felons, like, if you're not an addict and you're not a felon, I don't believe you. But the other message that it sends, so this is why it's so important to have a peer going in to do it, is because it sends a message to the person currently incarcerated. You can come on this side. You can get out, you can come out from that side, and you can be on this side. And that's an institutional perspective that's had in some places where it's successful, and that's lacking in other programs. And just to be clear, the exclusion from, the one treatment court that I was talking about, it's not a hard no. It's we're going to talk about it, but currently our policy is, you have to be off probation for 3 years. And I'm like, well, I don't qualify to be on your team. So it's not a hard no, but it's the same idea, right? The idea is that the message coming from the agency, the government, the one who is taking away your freedom, the one who is dehumanizing you. How do you dehumanize people? You treat them like an animal, you put them in a cage. You take away their rights so they have no voice. That's how you do it. That's how you dominate people. And so the cure to that is to give them a voice, is to give them a role at the table. That's why it's so powerful when you send a peer in, is because the person on the other side of the bar says, wait, I can do that. I can get out of this. The system is not 100% against me. I'm not permanently locked in this cell. I'm not permanently ostracized from society. There's hope. That's what it sends.
I completely agree with you, Troy. Is my audio, everything back?
Yes, Samantha, yes.
Yay, it's a miracle what power does. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Troy. I can't even begin to tell you, I was able to get a visitor badge. So I got a 1 year, they actually let me go back in there, God forbid. But they won't allow me to have an actual badge, but I can have a visitor. Hey, I'm making progress. So going back in there, I cannot begin to even tell you how leveraging my own personal story has impacted the people who I've spoke with. Because again, it's like we're so used to being treated as other, right? So therefore it makes you less trustful of the because since you've made me an other, now I'm going to view you as an other too. Like you're the other people who have never, you don't get me, you don't understand me, you don't understand where I've come from, and a lot of it comes too from the mental health aspect of it, the trauma, the mistreatment, the undervalued feeling that we have is we struggle with connection. So leveraging peers, people who have been there, changes lives. Because now me sitting inside there in orange, I can look at somebody, oh my God, this person is doing the darn deal. They have come out, they have changed the trajectory of their life, and they can do it. Because another piece of the puzzle is that because it's a lot of it is the whole life, not just a year or a couple of years here. It's a whole life of creating life skills that are not healthy necessarily, and we don't know how to do healthy coping. We don't know how to verbalize our trauma, our needs. We don't know how to address necessarily the lifelong habits that we have had. I mean, I am 50 years old, and even though I have spoke in my classes about dealing with trauma, dealing with your chemical imbalances, and that it's okay to be to need things, right? I have now just been in just this year dealing completely with the trauma and the additional things, and admitting that I can't do it alone. And knowing that there's other people out there that will more than happy to step forward and be that support system from me. But I also think that having more mentor related peer exposure, it's game changing, really.
Christine, I think one of the weaknesses that I think that we as a community have is that there's a lot of us doing a lot of work throughout the state, but other people don't know that, even within our own community. People may not know what we do or what Damien does or what Troy does. So I've always had this kind of vision, a work group that we would get together, spend an afternoon, break some bread, that type of thing, and talk about what we're doing as a community, and then invite like the Department of Corrections or some of these coalitions in and get their feedback and really come up with a comprehensive view of what we're doing. I mean, I worked 2.5 years at the Department of Corrections, and I couldn't get a bus pass for somebody that I was working with because they couldn't fathom how to give me $10 to get a bus pass, right? But now we have RSSs that actually work for the department, and they're part of the administration. I think that's awesome, but people don't know that. So I think that taking an analysis does a couple of things. We could create an outcome, could be we create a cheat sheet of what's available in each one of the communities and who you can contact, and give that to the CO3s and the probation officers and parole officers, that type of thing. So
Yeah, That's a great thing, Dan. I'd hope, and I'm gonna encourage you to spearhead that, and I will be, I would be willing to like be put in on that. I just want to clear up any misconception. The reentry project that they're using, there are a lot of peers that go in and they do go into that. I'm just saying, like, to get that, to build that program around the state and to advocacy there, I think there's a lot of resources that we're not tapping into that, like Troy, myself, Samantha, people would be willing to actually do more and go into more. I know, you know, personally, I've been going in the jail until COVID hit. I was going in once a month, and it really makes a difference that we all can get together and use the resources we have. I think a lot of times, like Dan said, we don't know what everybody else is doing. And I'm hearing right now, I see a bunch of people on here, at least it looks like Troy and Samantha and even Dan would be willing to be a part of being more of a resource for reentry projects that are going on.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
and-
Damien. Very well said. Yep. Go ahead, Troy.
Shout out to Clarissa and Jessica. So in Mojave County, Yavapai is killing it. Like, their program is awesome. And just a shout out to them. Mojave's basing a lot of its model off of Yavapai. So yeah, well done.
And on that note, I know Clarissa and Jessica are on here. Clarissa, do you want to share a little bit about the Yavapai reentry project?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. Oh, there we go. My name is Clarissa Nelson. I'm the project coordinator here for the Yavapai Reentry Project. Sitting next to me is Jessica. You know, this is actually a really amazing project. You know, it came from something that was brought up during a community meeting when they said, what do we need right now in our county? And somebody stood up and said, support for this population, resources, guidance, right? And with that, MapForce took a hold of that. And with a bunch of other organizations and members in the community, they built this project now, the one that I work for. Just a little side note, back in 2010, I was incarcerated as well. And right before I got out, this project that I work for now reached out to me. And I went through this program, and I made that commitment because I knew I needed to do something different. And I got paired with an amazing community coach, which is a volunteer person in the community that takes a training that steps alongside the individual and provides that guidance, that support, the encouragement, the hope, right? That's the biggest component, and the most vital one is hope, that we can do something different, that we can change our lives, right? And with that, you know, my coach, and I tell it over and over again, like, the biggest gift she gave me was she just saw me, right, as a human being that needed help. And with that, that was like a game changer for me. And I was then able to see that for myself. And then today, now I work for this project. I'm in my 4th year of working for this project. And now I'm the lead supervisor, and I'm like, how does that happen, right? And you know, we actually trained 6 counties, and only 5 of them were able to sustain a community coach project program, right? And so currently, right now, there's 5 other counties that have this type of a model. They have Apache County, Navajo County, Graham County, Pima County, and Pinal County. We trained Mojave, but they weren't able to sustain it. They struggled really hard. My hope is that, you know what I mean, something gets up and running there, because I know it is vital and it's needed a lot in the Mojave County area. Today, we work with both populations, the Department of Corrections and the jail. You know, we work with individuals with a slew of charges, right? If they fit the community coach model to be paired with a volunteer person in our community, then we would pair them with a coach that would help provide additional guidance and support for them, along with staff. So once we introduce that individual to their coach, we as staff would step back and provide the support to the coach that would then in turn provide the support to the participant. Then we have individuals that are in our independent referral part of our program. And with that part of the program, that's typically for people who have violent crimes and or weapons crimes and even sex crimes, right? Because the reality is they're coming back to our community, right? And without the proper guidance and support, people will typically go back to old behavior and old solution, right? And we want to help them not do that, and not just help them, but help our community, right? And so we also work with that population, but that population only gets paired with us as staff, right? We don't pair them with our volunteer coaches because we believe that everybody deserves an opportunity. You've done your time, right? And so now once you get out, you need somebody there that's gonna step alongside you and walk with you, right? And see you. And that's what we do. We see the person and we provide those wraparound services and we get them connected with what's going to help them help themselves.
That's great. Thank you, Carissa. We appreciate that. And, you know, our whole motto is nothing about us without us, right? So it's very exciting to see and hear that we have someone with lived experience leading that project. So thank you for what you do. I'm plugging in the chat here our email. So if you want to email me any resources, please do so. And then I can email that out to the rest of the group as well as the contact information of our panelists. One thing I wanted to touch base on that I see in the chat here is the difference between peer voice and family voice. And then John, I love this question that you just put in the chat here. The involvement of peer support is critical in connecting with the incarcerated. In what areas can normies help best? So if we want to touch on the normies, that's a new one for me, John. If we want to touch on the normies first, and then we'll touch on the peer and family support and the difference between the two.
I'll take a swing at that, at least
ahead,
the
Samantha.
initial swing. So, so it's very similar to the Crossroads program and the program that they run. There is that initial building the bridge, right? Where I think that peer support and only peer support can really be that leverage. But the second aspect is bringing in the normies, as you put, and to be able to provide healthy support without being that, we talk about the difference between being a support system versus being your enabler. So really about how do you create and support the person who has been impacted and who is coming out to change their life choices and how they live their lives. I think that there is a way to do that. Yeah, it's just about creating that level of trust into the group. Of course, always being there as a support system, whether it be through being the knowledge, it being that hand. It could be a level of mentorship. It could be a level of being that person who knows the resources that are available and really being present in being a support system. But I think that there is opportunity. It's just how do you build those relationships in a healthy manner.
I just had a question come over text asking what normies is, and John, I assumed normies means someone without the criminal justice experience, correct?
That's correct. Criminal justice or even substance abuse. I was a counselor, substance abuse counselor for many years. Was never addicted, so I had to put up with those trust issues also. How can you be helping us if you don't know what our experience has been like? That kind of stuff. So I like Samantha's response to my question about it's really a matter of trust. There's
Awesome.
got to
Yeah,
be a
thanks,
bridge to
John.
the trust to the rest of the community that can augment the peer support system as well. We all work together.
Great, thanks, John. And I think Troy mentioned the trust piece early on, right? And John, my only additional comment to that, I know I'm not on the panel, but I'm just going to share because I feel pretty passionate about the voice of individuals with lived experience is, you know, really hearing from them during the whole process of implementation or design, right? They should be the folks that you're having the conversation with from the beginning and wrapping things up with at the end. I feel like many times we put together systems or processes without asking the peer what they think, and then we find ourselves backpedaling and trying to change things and trying to involve them afterwards. But if we can include them on the front end, it can be really powerful, right? And we can get away from some of those trust issues, discrimination, as Troy mentioned, and whatnot. So thank you for asking that question. I wanted to go back to then the voice of peer support versus the voice of family support, and the importance of having both but separate voices at the table.
So Christina, the importance of that it's crucial because the family is the primary support. They're the primary stakeholder there. Like they should have a voice because they are they're the primary stakeholder in this whole conversation. There's support. They're the ones who bear the brunt of the consequences of the justice, of the incarceration. So yeah, they need a voice too. They're as impacted as the person who is incarcerated. They definitely need and deserve, to have their voices heard on policy and on all the processes that are involved. I love what you said, Christina, about nothing about us without us. That's the family too.
I agree. And a lot of times they, in the healing process of the person who has, because they're not the only one impacted, right? Even though we diverge for a period of time, whether it's, in county jail or in prisons, we diverge, right? So we are immediately separated. And a lot of times the family, we who go to jail, go to prison, we get to sit down somewhere, right? We get to sit down and at that moment begin healing, changing, becoming that next version of ourselves. Whereas the family, they're having to hold down the fort. They're having to, take care of our kiddos. They're having to continue to keep the house running and, whatever. So they're stuck over here running along. And then when we come home, we're reconnecting and we've become this whole other version of ourselves over here where we've been sitting down, right? And the family has their own set of, like I said, and I don't want to call them issues because it sounds kind of bad, but they have their own healing to do. So being able to provide services and support for those who have also been impacted. So how do we get them the support that they need to support and help encourage and embrace that new version of the person who has come home, where they've done their own work? Because we carry the person who has come over here, they've carried their own baggage and not necessarily been able to address those things. And when we come home, they expect us to be, unfortunately, they think we're still this person back here. And so how do we bring it forward where we're now a unit again? It takes a lot of healing and effort.
I worked on a project with the Department of Corrections a couple of years back. And we actually, before family support and peer support was like the new words, right? But we did a couple of things that I wish the department would have continued. One is that we had the inmate meet with their parole officer prior to them being released. And I know some parole officers actually continue to do that today. The other thing we did was, Samantha, was to bring in the family members and start doing exactly what you said. And it's not just like 2 weeks before they go out the door. It's like 6 months prior to so that they can see the new person. It was really, really effective. The other thing I think that and we can do this, you know, starting tomorrow, is educating family members on what does it mean for their loved one to be incarcerated. Because a lot of the frustration I hear from family members is that mom saying, you know, what's happening to my son? You know, what's happening to my daughter? That, and educating them through family support on what that actually is going to look like. They're not necessarily going to reach out to you and call you. The probation officer is not necessarily going to do X, Y, and D. Here is why, and explain to them that process. I think those two avenues we could look at.
Great, thanks, Dan. And taking a look at the chat here as well, I know we have one of our members who is in the similar situation and has her son being released, as she put here in the chat, on March 7th. So thank you, Damien, for responding to Nadine and trying to assist her. I know that has been, and Nadine, I don't know if you want to say something. I see you're on mute, but if you do, please let me know.
Not really, Christina. That's,
Thank you. Thank you, Nadine. And thanks everyone for responding back to Nadine's questions and be willing to help her. And I think Dan hit the nail on the head with her frustration as well. And our frustration with trying to help support Nadine and trying to figure out what she can do for her family, being that we have very limited information. So thank you for doing that. And then Clarissa, I also see here in the chat, I think you mentioned maybe having Damien come and present on steps to recovery. So that's exciting. Thank you for that. With that being said, then I think I'm sorry. There was one question we did not answer in the chat from Paige. Samantha, what was the barrier to increasing access to the 1-week program that you have at Perryville?
I specifically the one on Rosa.
Well, I guess just the 1-week program in totality. You talked about that being a barrier to increasing that service.
Yeah, without the support, I mean, we've been since the beginning, for the last like 2.5 years, we've been trying to expand and get more of a footprint within Perryville. But a lot of it's always about the space issue. It's always about, you know, not having enough availability to where we could participate on other units because they have such a strategic program within the Second Chance program. We have, you know, a relatively solid access but again, it's that small piece of the pie where if we could get on more units, our recent relationship that we were able to build on Rosa, it was only because they heard so much about our presence within the Second Chance program and that 1-week program over there. So they wanted it to bring over there, which we are getting ready to launch in March. So we're very excited about that. But the problem is then once you go across the street inside the gate, it's about the other units because they don't necessarily know about us and how much we have in there. They say, oh, we have our reentry program, which is run by I think we way back in the beginning of this conversation, it was about the CO3s and CO4s because they present the reentry program, which is their version of it. But half the time, those CO3s and CO4s, they have a huge caseload of people where they're not able to be present for those programs. Half the time they get the packet and they read out of the book. They don't have necessarily any and I don't know if it's motivation or if it's just training or if it's just they don't have the time to invest with the rest of the population because they have, you know, caseloads 50, 60, sometimes 80 people. And when it comes to the reentry program, they don't know how to deliver the program as well. So it's just a matter of getting the hierarchy's approval to get inside and more exposure and more presence because unfortunately it's a struggling system and it's hard to break into something, the good old boy system, when it hasn't had presence before.
Thank you, Samantha. And I wanted to make sure that I just touched on these couple notes here from our initial questions and our initial conversations a few weeks ago. But one of the things that our panelists pointed out as well, and I just wanted to recap here, was the need for more coaches, the need for additional mentorship. They also talked about more funding to help with job development, housing, therapy, life skills, a stronger emphasis on not enabling. And then training for coaches such as boundaries, motivational interviewing, conflict resolution, crisis management, resource availability, and knowledge. So again, just a couple points that I wanted to make sure we added on there for what you all feel would really be helpful for our reentry programs. So thank you for that. We have to close here. We have, if folks each want to take 1 minute before we close the program down, if we want to go around. And Samantha, do you want to share one final thought before we close?
I just want to first and foremost thank you for all of your time to come and join together on such an important topic and such an important issue that we have in our society today. I just want to express how much Arrowette and myself personally is here and want to be a part of the solution. So I look forward to next steps and connecting with you all to see where we can be more present and as a unified front present the help where it so desperately is needed.
Thanks, Samantha. Dan, I see you off from mute, so I'll go to you next.
I just wanted to say thank you for your time and allowing me to come in and share. This has been a compassion for me for many years, and I just want to continue and believe that we're moving forward and our voices are being heard, but we still have a long way to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Damien.
Yeah, I don't know all the answers, but I'm really grateful that there's people that are trying to help. And I mean, look at all the people that come together and all the support and advocacy that we do have that we didn't have before. So I'm just really grateful to see that going on, because it touches me personally, because I am that guy, you know. I did want to put in one final thought. I know they're building, you asked about the reentry program, building the new one in Prescott. And I think there should be some quality measures there and maybe some advocacy from some peer supports to make sure that whether it's a rotating advocate or something to kind of make sure that, these things happen instead. I think we lose sight. A lot of programs start with so much compassion and so much, wanting to do a certain thing. And then we just get so busy we lose sight. So it's always good to have a little bit of quality measures around what we're doing.
Oh, you're right, Beth.
Great, thanks, Damien. And Troy.
Yeah, thank you, Christine, and thank you all panelists and everybody who's participating today. There's a lot of goodwill in our communities today. There's a lot of people that recognize that we cannot punish people out of addiction and mental health, and we're seeing a lot of really exciting things happening. And I still really believe that, the way I started out with is just that, until we start treating people like people, and so we start getting them a voice and listening to them, then our communities are not going to heal. So thank you.
Thank you, Troy. And Dan, Damien, Samantha, and Troy, we are here for you. We are here to support you. Again, our motto is nothing about us without us. And we don't have a whole lot of folks who have been incarcerated. So we look to you as the experts, and we're the first ones to admit that, which is why we're having this conversation. We need to hear from the people who've been there, done that, have had that lived experience. So thank you. Kathy.
So I want to thank each of the panelists. You guys were great. It's taken a lot of courage to do what you've done. You really didn't express the challenges and the barriers, but along the way, you reduced a lot of stigma, and the result has been new programs that wouldn't have been there. I'm the one that asked the question about the difference between peer and family members, and I found it very interesting how you responded, because you've responded more in an empathetic way where family members should be involved because they have their stressors too. I look back at 12 years ago, my involvement with NAMI when peers were not allowed to have a voice. You guys, it was only 12 years ago. We did not have a voice. And look what you have done. The stigma, and it takes, I'm surprised there isn't more gray hair. I think Dan has some, but he's hiding it. So again, oh, there we go. Thank you all. It was wonderful.
All right, and then Lori, announcements.
Yeah, and thank you, Kathy. So we have Mental Health Monday, the last Monday of every month, same time, same link. And we are looking for topics. What do you want to see addressed? We can round up speakers. Do you want to be a speaker? Do you have a topic you'd like to present on? Or we can do panels. So, we're doing this for you and with you, for the community, with the community. So we want your input for upcoming topic ideas. The next Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition meeting is the third Wednesday, always the third Wednesday of the month from 1 to 2:30. So that would be March 15th. And I just want to remind you to look at the NAMI-Yavapai.org site for future NAMI Yavapai events. And again, thank you, panelists, for coming together today. And I think that this is where we cast a pebble into the pond and the ripple effect goes exponentially. The four of you will, I think, be getting together, connecting. You have each other's email addresses. I love the idea that Dan said, let's get together, break bread, getting some resources together for different regions. This is, advocacy, connection, growth, all rolled into one, and you're spearheading this, and there are others, and you know who they are. Let's bring them all together. So thank you, everybody.
All right, look at that. Here, I thought we were going to run out of time, and we actually have 6 minutes to spare.
Woohoo!
Any topic ideas for next month? All right, well, if you do, as Lori mentioned, please let us know, and we'll be happy to accommodate.
I'd like to just throw it out there that maybe not next month, the following month, maybe we do a panel discussion on family support and incarceration, or maybe, 3 months down the road. I think that might be a topic that, we can get some folks that have actually been through the system on the other side and what they went through. I think that might be really important. Just a thought.
I like it. Thanks, Dan. All right.
Christina,
Yes.
Damien went in the chat that I thought was interesting. What does it take to be successful in life? Damien, I'm sorry, I'm probably misquoting, but
I was just asking, make a good discussion be like, what are the biggest things that need to be addressed to become successful? Like,
yeah. But
Okay.
starting from, we have a problem, starting from as we grow up, what are the things that we need to avoid some of these problems? I think that's what he meant. Just a thought.
And what is success for these folks?
living a content life.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. But it's like, I think the key here is, what is your definition of success? Because each person has their own version, and realizing what my version is. versus what society's is. How
Mhm.
do I enjoy who I am, what I am, and where I'm going? So I think that that's really a key to success as the whole. What is your version? What does it look like for you?
Mhm.
Sounds good.
That might be a good topic.
Yeah. Just the inverse of what Damien was talking about. Starting from a different place. Okay.
Great, thanks, Will, for pointing that out. Great conversation point. Paige, I see you're off of mute.
Yeah, I was wondering, just as a kind of follow-up from that, thinking about how to define success and what a successful life looks like on an individualized basis. I wonder if an interesting future topic would be to dialogue about how different systems define success and how we can share information across systems. My mind is kind of thinking about value-based purchasing in the health plans and a very specific, a narrow way that success may be defined and value may be defined, and how that can be broadened to look at other systems.
Great, thanks, Paige. All right, great conversation. All right, we have 2 minutes left. We'll give you those 2 minutes back. By the time you hang up, you'll only have 1. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.